For sure.
With that, Aaron, why don't you introduce the 5-minute friendly, because we're going to do an early 5-minute friendly, because the biggest story of the week was Tottenham Hot Spur, and for Isaac and I, we've had some distance, which is good. I've come out of my darkness from Friday, which I tried to master and top of the table pick 'em, which I'm really quickly going to plug. Aaron is continuing his hot streak of just knowing exactly what's going to happen in every single Premier League game. It's pretty interesting just to listen to and then see happen. But Aaron, please introduce this 5-minute friendly.
Yeah, so we had a great guest this week, a good friend from college, my friend Rotem, who is a longtime Spurs fan as well. As I said on the 5-minute friendly, I feel like I'm just surrounded by Spurs fans these days. But yeah, he had some great insights into being a Spurs fan, the North London derby, kind of who he'd like to see come in and go out, as well as Jose's situation. So I think it should be a good listen. All right, everyone, welcome to another 5-minute friendly. I am here with a dear friend, Mr. Rotem Magal, who is another Spurs fan. I feel like I'm just surrounded by coy boys these days. But Rotem, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, my passion for Spurs really started when I went to Canada for an exchange program. I was in 8th grade, and I stayed with a British family, and the uncle in the family, I guess. He was a Spurs fan, and I just got hooked then. He was just so passionate about the team, and the other kid that I was in the home with was also a soccer fan, and we just vibed about it, and it just became a thing. And I've started getting more interested in the Premier League as of, I guess, the end of college, and I felt like I should choose a team to support, and I went for the Spurs.
Now, did you have a favorite player during that time period that really got you hooked on the Spurs?
I think Berbatov. I think he's the guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love Berbatov.
There we go.
He really excelled when he came to Manchester United, so...
Yep, there we go. It's a theme, apparently, right? In this show. McCoy's in Manchester United, and yeah.
So, obviously, last weekend was the North London derby, which didn't go particularly well for your boys. I would say. What are your thoughts about it? How do you think the team approached it? Obviously, we can talk about Lamella's goal as well, because that's the one shining light of the whole 90 minutes for you, probably.
Yeah, I mean, the Lamella goal was incredible. I don't think that I've screamed that much since Lucas and Llorente scored the goals in the Champions League when we reached the final. But yeah, the Rabona was just incredible. Just perfection, really. And it was the second Rabona goal, so he's kind of on track there he's on to something.
He's got a trademark.
Yeah, but I mean, really, Arsenal dominated the game throughout. The defense is in shambles, and I think it's been in shambles for quite a long time. And there was a lot of focus, I guess, right before Pochettino left, there was a lot of focus on figuring out midfield and the connection between midfield and attacking players, and that was 10-2, and I think it's been successful. Mourinho brought Højbjerg in, and that has been an incredible addition, but I think ultimately it's hard also because Mourinho's tactic is defense, right? And it hasn't been there in the Arsenal game, although it was following a couple amazing performances. I guess amazing is a little of an overstatement, but it just shows that there are really structural issues with the team that have to be dealt with, and ultimately I think we need to rebuild.
So you provided the perfect segue there, because I wanted to ask you about the so-called special one and your thoughts about Mourinho, and he came out with some pretty incendiary comments along with Hugo Lloris about the team, about the way they train, their attitude. What are your thoughts about Mourinho? Do you think he should stay for next season? And do you think he's the right one to kind of take this project to the next level?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews. I think that Mourinho has a very good history in terms of, I mean, he's the chosen one. He is the one who brings trophies, but ultimately, when it gets to the past few years and his interactions with the players, I think he needs to have a specific type of player under him to be able to succeed. And Tottenham, they were able to adapt to some extent. Some of the players were able to do that. But if he is to stay, which I'm not a big fan of just tearing it out coach after coach after coach, but I feel like Daniel Levy is getting to the point where he's feeling like he has to be as ruthless as Chelsea, you know? and remove coach after coach and just like discard them, I think it's ultimately also going to cost a lot to the club. And I don't think that it's the best idea to take him out. I think he should get some more time. Hopefully some money will be able to help him start some sort of rebuilding of the team. And if he gets decent results next year, maybe that could help him stick around as well. But I think that's an unpopular opinion. Pochettino was just so charismatic and so beloved by a lot of Spurs fans. And that there's just the contrast there, you know?
Well, I'm interested to hear, after hearing you say that's an unpopular opinion, I'm interested to hear what the other Tottenham fans on the podcast think about that.
There we go.
So you mentioned rebuilding. Last question for you. If you could have one player go out, one player come in, within reason, we're not talking Mbappe, anything like that.
Fair enough.
But within reason, one in, one out, who would they be?
I think we need to rebuild the defense. I don't have a player in mind. I mean, central defender has really been a big issue for us. So someone who would be able to come in and really strengthen up the back, that would be awesome. And in terms of leaving, goodness, I love all of them. It's hard. Dyer, he's been favored by Mourinho, and at least in the beginning, and it seemed like it was going to really work, and it just hasn't. It's just not, the back is not jiving at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Mourinho wanted Dyer when he was at Man U, and I'm glad that never happened, to be honest.
There we go.
Well, Rotem, thank you so much for joining us for this 5-minute friendly. I wish you the best down in sunny Texas, and thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers, man. Definitely.
Well, once again, just an amazing interview. A lot of fun. And just leading off with Berbatov. Oh, I remember.
I know.
This was back in my FIFA days. Yeah, I didn't watch at this point in my life, but I remember when he showed up on FIFA playing with Manchester United. Not with the Spurs. I didn't know about the Spurs back then, but playing with Man U, I agree, Aaron. He did some work for me back then.
Yeah, he just had such a different style than everyone else. I saw an interview
That's a good way to put it,
where he was talking to Gary Neville, and they were watching all of his best goals from both Spurs, Man U, other clubs he had played for as well. And it was just such a kind of languid style where it looked like he was kind of lagging behind the play, and then all of a sudden he would just pop up with just like the most majestic goal you could ever imagine. He was a very unique player.
Yeah, and he was one of those players. I think there was a stat that I heard while he was still playing that just an amazing percentage of his goals came inside 12 yards. So he did pull out that delicious goal every once in a while, but he had that, what people call a striker's instinct. He usually, it was very simple. It seemed, watching him, it seemed like he was just walking into the box, finding himself space and tucking it away. So it's very simple, lovely to watch, and someone that both Spurs and Man U fans can appreciate.
One of the first points that Rotem made that I just absolutely agree with is that the defense is in shambles. And we've talked about this since our first pod this year. And, I do agree with him that the focus has been on the midfield, and barring injury, for example, we saw Lo Celso today and he performed well. I think they did a good job. But the defense is really flawed, and honestly, I think Sanchez is just the weak link in that defense right now.
Yeah,
I mean, is there a center back that you really like in that defense?
Right. Yeah. Who is?
No, it's true. I like Alderweireld as a person, not necessarily as a center back, though.
Yeah, but he is. Yeah, considering he's the best we got, that's not great, and he's getting older. So we're going to have to do some major investment. Yeah, older and slower. So, yeah, it's a tough back line. And Reguilon, I hope he's okay, but he went out today after getting stomped on. So who knows what's going to happen there. Yeah, it's not good.
But I will just say, I feel like Ben Davies, I loved him. And when Reguilon came in, I was happy to have Reguilon, but also I wish that because... And we're going to tangent on Spurs for a while, but one of the things that we will talk a little bit more about in a little bit is Lloris and some of the comments he made about players who aren't necessarily practicing hard and not being ready for their place in the squad, when they are going to come in. And I don't think Ben Davis is one of those people he's talking about. I think obviously, I think we can all guess that Dele Alli is on that list. I don't think that's a difficult one to figure out. There might be more. There probably is. Do you say Gareth as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that too. But I don't think Ben Davis is, and he did great today coming in. But I hear you on Reguilon, but I think Reguilon down gives us some Ben Davis, which is great.
Yeah, that's probably I guess that's the side that they're most comfortable in. So I guess that's a good thing. But with Davis, I mean, he can have his days too. But so I don't know. It's like there's not one single player along that back four that you feel confident in any given day, which is
and maybe that's why Højbjerg has stood out so much this season as well.
Yeah,
it's a good point. It's a good point. And now Ndombele is playing that role. And honestly, I painfully analyzed the goals that were given up in the Zagreb game, and I felt like Sissoko on the first goal. There's a piece of me that feels like he didn't. And the second goal, first of all, he just got outrun and gave up on tracking his man, and that was bad. Yeah. But the first goal, he doesn't pressure the ball in the midfield after Aurier gets out of position and tackles and causes the deflection. And I look at it, and I think he's perfectly shaped within the defense. And I think, is this coaching? Or is this Sissoko not closing out when he shouldn't, trying to close down? Or is this the coaching that says, no, hold the system? Because I guess what I'm transitioning to, Isaac, is Mourinho. And I actually 100% agree with Rotem that I think it would be costly for the club, but there might be something to the way that Chelsea runs things. And getting rid of Lampard was, at this point, it was the right decision. It was the right decision. Whether you think it's heartless or not, he wasn't getting things done, and he wasn't effective on the sideline.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. There's just so much. I think, and Rotem did mention that it might be an unpopular opinion that keeping Mourinho is the right call. It is. I am, and never was, I was never a Mourinho fan, and probably will never be for the rest of my life. So no matter what he does with Spurs, so I'm biased, very biased. Part of it is because it comes from the top, and him, Mourinho again coming out and saying, even though he said it was my team, kind of putting it again on the players, saying that they failed at the basics of life. It's like, that's management, that's leadership. It's tough. It's tough to swallow, but I do hear that, and at this point, I don't know if they'll gain much from making a change in the next couple weeks. So at this point, I almost feel like just ride it out. Probably not going to finish in a European spot. They're going to need to rebuild, I think, in management and the back line. I don't see any.
What about for
improvement
next
going
year,
on.
though? Like, do you bring him into next year?
No, like I think at the end of this season, they need to rebuild both management, meaning Mourinho, and the back line. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I have you on tape saying as we go into stuff, because honestly, Aaron, this was a year of expectation. I mean, the expectations that were set at the beginning of the year, Aaron, versus what has happened. I'm not gonna have at the end of the season. We'll do biggest disappointments. I'm not gonna do Spurs, but it's up there.
Well, I think it's interesting, the comparison to how Chelsea do things, and on that expectation as well, because I think, yes, there's something to say for that. The quick turnaround of managers has been good for Chelsea, and I think that for the last few managers they've had, they sacked at the right times. Conte, Sarri, Lampard, all were kind of causing trouble and were kind of at the end of their reigns there, you could tell, and it was going downhill. But at the same time, they're appointing managers that have that short shelf life. Okay. And I think there's also a commonality in the way that they've done transfers, Spurs and Chelsea as well, in that the transfers brought in this past summer, were not necessarily Jose's requests. These were just players that the club saw, this financially looks like a good idea. Gareth Bale is a star player. We'll get him in on loan. He won't cause any trouble. Reguilon on a 2-year loan or whatever it is. Sounds great. And I think Chelsea do that in a lot of ways too, where the club buys players. It's not for the manager's system. And so I think that there's a tough avenue that they're going down there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, and Aaron, you've said a lot about Mourinho, and I don't disagree with much of what you say. And Isaac, I hear you about not being necessarily a fan of his, but I think that this, really pivoting to the Zagreb and the Europa League and just the disappointment. And, I was trying to find an American comp, okay, to my friends who don't follow soccer. How could I explain? And the only thing I could come up with was the first loss the Patriots suffered against the Giants in the perfect season. And that doesn't even quite, because the Giants are a legitimate NFL team. So it'd be like if they lost to like a really good college team in that Super Bowl. It was bad. And I guess, Isaac, here's for me, it's more on the players. I think you could bring in any manager right now. It doesn't matter who it is. These players just don't have it. They don't have it. They were in a Champions League final, and that game was not inspiring at all. And then here we are, an opportunity, like this is the gold opportunity. You get silverware and a spot that you're like, let's go, we're up 2-0. What? And we lose it? That is a player mentality thing, and I just don't think that the manager, I'm not saying that Jose's great,
when the players come out and say all they do in practice is run defensive drills and there's no discussion or very little about how to play possession style or attacking football. If you're up 2-0 against an inferior team, what you need to do is possess the ball and keep the ball. So if your management is not drilling you in that every day, then I'm not surprised that something like that happens. What happened on Thursday. So I think, I think there is something to do with the players. Yeah, of course. But it's hard to tell a professional player to try harder. It's like, they're doing their job. So at some point I think there's the blame has to be put on up top. I don't know.
And to a large extent, it's the coach's job to motivate the team. And this was something that I heard from Jose a lot when he was at Manchester United, too. And I think if you're only coaching defensive tactics and only focusing on the defense, your team isn't going to be motivated to attack and go win games. They're going to be motivated to stay back and prevent goals. And I think that's just kind of the ethos that's built into these Mourinho teams. And they just don't enjoy practice. They don't enjoy training. They don't enjoy getting better as a team so much. The only time they find enjoyment is when they're applauded for their defensive work, and even that kind of starts to slip when you lose motivation.
Yeah, I just can't, like, with this group of players, like they have good players, like players that would walk onto the starting 11 in most Premier League clubs, except with the exception probably of City and maybe Liverpool, but at this point, who knows? So, like, if you plop this club or these players with a manager like a Klopp or a Pep or a Brendan Rodgers, he's in that group, who just know how to raise the intensity and maintain the intensity throughout a long stretch of season, I think they would do much better. Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it at that, but I will say that we're going to do a little activity a little later, but Spurs still have a chance at top 4.
They do,
because now that's all we have left.
Way to end on a high note.
No, they have a chance. They have a...
Yeah, and I think, I'd like to wrap it up on Mourinho. I think that I could go back again to Aaron's point a few weeks ago about, the European chances and how that plays with a manager, whether you retain a manager or sack a manager. If Mourinho can claw back to the top 4, then he does deserve another shot next year. I will say that.
No, I totally agree with that. But Isaac, I think what you said about not even really spending a concerted and thoughtful amount of time in offense is really showing on the pitch. And with Son out for the foreseeable future, they're going to really have to work on something, because Mora is great, and but he's just energy. He's just energy. That's all he is. And you start putting Lamella in that role, don't get me started. So,
Goat.
So Bye.